campaigning. Cartoonist Rights Network International, United States and International. Cartoonist Rights Network International is a small organisation making a huge impact. Monitoring threats and abuses worldwide, they have become a lifeline to cartoonists in danger across the world. Despite their limited size, CRNI have created a global network to focus international attention on the persecution of cartoonists. The network was instrumental in the release of Ramon Nusay Esono Ebale, a cartoonist from Equatorial Guinea who was imprisoned for criticising his country's leadership. They provide essential support for political artists such as Malaysian cartoonist Zuna, who was accused of sedition and subjected to a travel ban. Imprisoned Iranian cartoonist Nikahan Kausa, who has since been resettled in North America. Jake Thrasher, a teenager who received death threats after criticising white supremacy, and Tony Namate, a Zimbabwean cartoonist who faced personal threats from pro-Mugabe thugs. They also campaigned for the release of Ali Dorani, aka Eaten Fish, from Manus Island and supported his journey to find refuge in Norway.
Cartoonists are often the canaries in the mine, some of the first people targeted when authorities want to crack down on art and on journalism, and they often do so in isolation, so it's really important to celebrate the work of an organisation that can bring together those groups to fight for the rights of one another.
CRNI tracks censorship, fines, penalties, physical intimidation, assaults, imprisonments and assassinations. They work with human rights organisations to campaign for cartoonists and confront those who censor political cartoons. Each year, CRNI hosts its Courage in Editorial Cartooning Award. Receiving this award brings international attention to a cartoonist's work, grows their audience, and thus reduces the pressures they face. Cartoonists are frequently targeted by authoritarian governments. Without the protection of unions or large media organisations, external support is crucial. CRNI provides this critical aid for cartoonists worldwide.
Institute for Media and Society, Nigeria. It's estimated that 75% of radio and television stations in Nigeria are now owned by politicians. Mainstream media is divided along political lines. Meanwhile, rural communities are increasingly neglected and marginalised. One NGO is going to great lengths to improve the Nigerian media landscape. The Institute for Media and Society challenge regulation and foster the creation of local radio stations. IMS combines advocacy to repeal legal restrictions and practical action to encourage Nigerians to use their voices and develop their own media outlets. They study the legal framework in which Nigerian media operate and pressure the government to make changes. Their work has helped license 17 community radio stations, which have since evolved into platforms championing community development, transparency, and accountability in governance.
Institute for Media and Society are really inspiring because they are creating bottom-up changes by working with marginalised groups and reaching rural communities that might not be reached in any other way.
In one of its latest battles, IMS has been advocating for the independence of the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, who regulate the country's broadcast media. The agency is currently subject to ongoing government interference, majorly restricting freedom of expression. In 2018, they had a huge success in their opposition of the Nigerian Press Council Bill. This bill was described as unconstitutional and would have criminalised journalistic practice. They are working against an increasingly hostile environment, which has seen murders, arrests, and threats against journalists. Regardless, they continue to push for media independence and have provided a voice and a platform for Nigeria's marginalised rural communities.
Media Rights Agenda, Nigeria. Media Rights Agenda is a non-profit organisation in Nigeria. Over the last 2 decades, they've been fighting for media freedom and freedom of expression. By taking legal action against dozens of institutions, politicians and officials, they aim to alleviate some of the country's repressive laws around media freedom. Although the Constitution guarantees freedom of expression, other laws often overrule. Journalists have been punished for breaching the Cybercrimes Act, which allows people to claim they've been cyber-stalked. In 2018, MRA started challenging the Cybercrimes Act. Thanks to their determination, the case is now pending at the Nigerian Supreme Court. They also campaigned for over a decade to ensure that Nigeria adopted its own Freedom of Information Act and even drafted the bill. Sadly, many states and institutions still refuse to comply with the Act. Media Rights Agenda have named, shamed and sued 66 institutions and 2 judges for doing so.
The work that Media Rights Agenda do in Nigeria is of clear impact. They have managed to change the legislative landscape in which they're working, and not just changing the situation legislatively, but also continuing to fight to make sure that what is written in law is actually implemented.
At a continental level, MRA have been campaigning against internet shutdowns in Africa. Because of this, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights affirmed the rights of all Africans to free expression online. They also work to develop the African Declaration on Internet Rights and Freedoms and the African Platform on Access to Information Declaration. Their tireless work for decades has greatly improved media freedoms in Nigeria. By campaigning for free expression, they have triggered a movement towards greater equality.
P24, Turkey. Turkey has become an increasingly dangerous place for journalists. Speaking freely can result in fines, arrest, and lengthy jail sentences. The country has become the world's largest jailer of journalists, with scores behind bars. But they're not the only ones in danger. Academics, artists, and ordinary Turks expressing dissent have faced legal sanctions, economic pressure, and even arrests. In one extreme case, a woman was arrested for speaking poorly of the Turkish president on a bus. In this high-risk environment, some are fighting harder than ever for the right to free expression. Civil society organisation P24 has adopted an ambitious programme to neutralise censorship in the country. The group promotes free expression and fight to counteract their government's shortcomings. Their legal team provide pro bono support for journalists and academics who are on trial. Meanwhile, their newly launched literature house provides freelance opportunities and visibility for those stifled by the government. They also practice coordinated social media and public advocacy. This includes live tweeting from courtrooms and campaigning through an array of websites, newsletters, and exhibitions. One of their projects, Expression Interrupted, is a website and newsletter tracking the progress of freedom of expression cases throughout the country.
I think P24 is really inspiring because the fact that it's a collective of organisations that are really coming together and standing for the fundamental principles of being able to express yourself in a free society. They're risking their lives on a day-to-day basis for things that we take for granted in the West.
The team have put themselves on the line and many have already been detained. In a treacherous place for journalists, they are carving a new path for free expression and providing a glimmer of hope for civil society.